Good morning. Good morning, church. Can you hear me? Yeah. A lot of people have coached me how to preach a sermon, so I'm trying to improve. Today is one of the improvements. The sermons are titled today, The Promised Seed, Part 2, The Ancients. Historians and Darwinians want us to believe that our history of humankind belonged to 3 million years ago, called prehistory, and then we have history. And so, in all the ages, the prehistory is the Stone Age, Bronze Age, and so fail. Yes. Called the Stone Age, Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. Okay, and then they want us to believe that we all evolved from monkeys. Okay, and if you look carefully, it morphed into this figure. And I warn the ladies, if you stare too long in the mirror, you may see something behind you. Okay, your real feature. And so these are our relation. If you want to choose any one of them, it's up to you. But you're not happy with this, you can have many others to choose from. So, but the problem is, why are there still monkeys around? If we all come from monkeys, by right there should not be any monkeys. And evolutionists want us to believe that humans and chimpanzees evolved from a common ancestor. This common ancestor and gorillas evolved from an older common ancestor. This common ancestor, along with orangutans and gibbons, split from another common ancestor. Finally, the common ancestor of humans, chimps, gorillas, orangutans, gibbons share a common ancestor with monkeys. Why do you still not understand? Now, Upat is our place artifact. It's coined by American naturalist Sanderson for objects that is out of place. It doesn't belong there. It is too far advanced for that kind of thing to happen in those olden days civilizations. Here it is. Here is supposed to be a replica of an aeroplane. Here is a computer chip. Here is a battery. Here is a computer model. And here, if you look at here, is in the Egyptian site. Here is supposed to be a helicopter. Here is supposed to be a glider and all other things. In this book, you can get the internet, Secrets of the Lost Races, Advanced Technology in Ancient Civilizations. Here are other websites, you can look at it, all mention about ancient things that are far in advance than you used to believe. And here are the things, ancient accurate maps, ancient documents, similarities to other over the globe, ancient religion, common creation and global flood myths, precise methods of time measurement, and evidence of powerful weapons, ancient navigation devices, ancient metalworking, jewelry, mechanical devices, far in advance that what we believe the Stone Age people are supposed to do, and all the others. Now, cavemen were a figment of the imagination of science illustrators and science who needed to bolster biblical alternative theories for the creation of man. Today, science recognizes that Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon men were just men, and DNA studies have shown that they were just same as modern man. Genesis 4 tells us Cain built a city. The evidence from archaeology tells us that ancient cities and civilizations all appear suddenly in advanced stage. Not cavemen, not so. Okay? Last time we studied about the promised seed, we say that from the Bible, God created the heavens and the earth. God put in the midst of the garden the tree of knowledge, good and evil, tree of life. Unfortunately, the first man and the first lady took hold of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which were forbidden. And because of that, they were sinned against God and they have to die. And they were driven out of the Garden of Eden. But God promised that even though they were driven out and even though they have to die, God will send somebody, a promised seed, that will bruise the head of the serpent and will save them from their sin. And then these story of promises were handed down from Adam to Noah, 10 generations, and from Noah to Abraham, 10 generations. The question that begs us to ask is, did the ancients, that is non-believers, know or pagan, know about this story of creation, of paradise, the fall of man, and of the promised seed? Did they know? In this book, you can get on the internet, after the flood, where Bill Cooper, he traces all these things. It says here, the knowledge of God amongst the early pagans. It is commonly supposed, for example, that the nations of the world became aware of God of Genesis only after they were evangelized by Christian missionaries. Only since the translation of scriptures into their own language, it is assumed that they become conscious of the creation of God who created it. It is further supposed that early pagan men can have had no concept of a divinity higher than that of an idol, because it is impossible to come to a knowledge of the one true God without that knowledge being given through the direct revelation of His Word. But then we found that pagan man was indeed aware of God and of His attributes and power, and this awareness had existed and flourished for centuries without any recourse at all to scriptures. And they have a profound knowledge and appreciation of an eternal and almighty creator God, His fatherhood and attributes, and these are found in writings of various historians in ancient world and amongst the teachings of earliest philosophers. And this is a Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu, 6th century BC. Before time and throughout time, there has been a self-existing being, eternal, infinite, complete, omnipresent. Outside this being, before the beginning, there was nothing. Really biblical. And here is an ancient text from Heliopolis, from Egypt. I am the creator of all things that exist. They came from my mouth. Heaven and earth did not exist, nor have been created the herbs of the ground, nor the creeping things. I raised them out of the pre-emil abscess from the state of non-being. Biblical stuff. And then it says here, the ancient Egyptian never believed in evolutionary concepts. Okay? They believed in the divine creation of the universe. It was so strongly held that throughout Egypt it governed every sphere of thought, action, political, educational, philosophy, and so on. Nowhere in all the long history of Egypt do we find that a philosopher arose who was prepared to propagate the notion that the universe came into being through the agency of non-divine forces and processes. So they believe in the supernatural. And every major culture throughout the ancient world of which we have any record, the overwhelming consensus was that the universe has been created by often a single and usually supreme being, even in notoriously polytheistic cultures. And in the midst of all this perverse paganism, there is this express view of a creator being. And even the Greeks, they have this thing. First of all, the void came to being. Next, earth, out of the void came darkness. Out of the darkness came light and day. Genesis, right? Chapter 1. And you still don't believe in our modern world. You look at this graph in 2007, how many of us are actually religious, believe in the supernatural? And how many don't? Actually, if you look at this, non-religious 11%, atheist 2.3%, if you total up, 87% of people of the world today are actually religious, believe in a supernatural being. Only 13% are non-religious. Now we come to the date of creation. Warren Hopkins, the librarian at Andrews West University, he examined 2,500 references to biblical chronology, and he found that Ellen White and matches that of Archbishop Usher. Archbishop Usher is the Irish bishop who wrote a chronology. And it says here, Archbishop Usher and Sister White believe the fall of 4004 BC was the creation of the earth and man. And the creation stories from all around the ancient world all have a common theme. When mankind is created from dirt, mud, or clay by a divine being. The Eskimos, ancient Egyptians, Japanese, South Americans all have about the same story, and even among the Aborigines in Australia, far away, have this story of creation and the Creator God. The question, when did Adam and Eve sin after the creation of the world? In this text, it says here, Jesus was the second Adam. There was this paper on that. It says here, Jesus was sinless for 33 and a half years, became sin for us when crucified on the cross in spring of AD 33. And if he's a second Adam, could it be possible that Adam was sinless for 33 and a half years? Speculation. And then this book of Jubilees, author unknown, written the 2nd century BC, it says here, Adam and Eve were in the garden of paradise 7 years. I do believe it's a short time. It cannot be a long time, because if it's a long time, they will be so fortified with the truth, they would not be so easily tempted. How many children have Adam and Eve? It was believed that they have 33 sons and then 23 daughters. That's why they are able to intermarry. They have daughters and so on, for Cain and Abel and so on. Did the ancients know about this story of the promised seed? Ancient forebears in this book, British, Irish, Mayans, all have said the earth was recent creation, once suffered a flood. They all knew this without recourse to the book of Genesis. Did they know Adam and Eve's disobedience? There is evidence that the pagans not only knew of the disobedience of Adam and Eve, and that this disobedience was punishable by death, but also of the subsequent offering of salvation again. Here he mentioned about the limping. That's why the pagan, remember the Mount Carmel, they limp and jump. Limping knew that this limping or turning aside implied death, eternal death. Here is a famous discovery in the city of Akkad. Akkadians founded by Nimrod knew of the story of temptation of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. It is in the British Museum. It's called the Temptation Seal. And here's what George Smith of the British Museum said, who lived in the middle of 1800s. One striking and important specimen early time in the British Museum has two figures sitting on one side. This is Eve, this is Adam, holding on the fence to the fruit, and behind the back of Eve was a stretched serpent. And it's evident that the form of the story of the fall, similar to that of Genesis, was known from early times in Babylonia. Did the pagan knew the promise of eternal life? Yes, they know, because they have in their myth and legends enacting the story of that in the life. Evidences of the truth of the story of the promised seed, you can find that the Garden of Eden, the Sabbath keeping before antediluvians, the Adam and Eve. We go in detail one by one. Hopefully we have time. The Garden of Eden, at the cherubim guarded gate of paradise, the divine glory was revealed. Here came Adam and his sons to worship God. Here they renewed their vows of obedience to that law, the transgression of which had banished them from Eden. And we know from Revelation 21:1, and we know from writings of Mrs. White, this was Eden. Garden of Eden was taken up just before the flood. It's now in heaven, waiting for us. And we know that if you keep the Sabbath, and it was Sabbath in Genesis, you will know about the evidence of the Creator God, because Sabbath is a sign of the Creator God. It is a sign that God created the heaven and the earth. As long as you keep the Sabbath, you will know who is the Creator God. And then you have the first recorded sacrifice. Cain knew about this sacrifice. Okay? And he came to offer his own sacrifice. We will come to that later on, more about this type of sacrifice. Then we have Adam. Adam was called the preacher of death. For centuries, Adam recounted the story of his fall to sin. The penalty of this disobedience is death. Year after year, he faithfully prophesied he is going to die until one day, to the shock of his descendants, Adam really died. So when he died at his funeral, these are the people along with the Canaanites, Canaan and so on, who witnessed the funeral of Adam, all these antediluvians, to the 10th generation. And then when we come to Enoch, we know that he was a 7th generation from Adam, born to 622, and he knew Adam for the remaining 308 years of his life. The old man Adam did not learn of descendants Enoch's translation. He was translated exactly 57 years after Adam's death. But he knew about Enoch's fervent preaching about the destruction of this worldwide flood. And here is Jude chapter 1 verse 14. Enoch prophesied about the second coming at the same time about the destruction of the world 669 years before it happened. So the prophecy or the preaching of the destruction of the world by Noah about the flood was not done first by Noah, but actually by Enoch. 669 years, because he named his son Methuselah. When he is dead, it shall be sent. So Enoch walked with God, and then we find that Enoch did hear the hammerings of construction of the ark. He was translated to heaven, and Enoch repeated, and Methuselah and his sons who lived to hear the preaching of Noah assisted in the building of the ark. Heaven's gate was open to receive Enoch, and these are the people who were still alive when Enoch was translated. See the ages of the antediluvians. God's providence allowed those who witnessed Adam's funeral to be also alive at the time of Enoch's translation. So as therefore Enoch's departure was a testimony of God's faithfulness and of his promise of eternal life. Let me come to Noah, who is the end-time preacher. Noah and the flood. God was not happy with the sinful spread in the world, and he promised that they shall have only 120 years of life before the flood. And there was great wickedness in the earth. Their thoughts were continuing evil. The building of the ark commenced when Noah was 480 years old. That is before any of his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, had been born. In fact, just 20 years before the birth of Shem. This was the faith of Noah. He built the ark even before he has a family. So the construction of the ark was at 2468 BC, 120 years before it happened. The flood came 120 years later, 2348 BC. All the fountains of the great deep were broken up. The windows of heaven were opened. The rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And here are the people perishing in the waters of the flood. Climbing to the tallest mountain, the waters increased and the ark went up upon the face of the waters. A terrifying experience, even for those in the ark. And all flesh died and moved upon the earth. The population before the flood, it was presumed to be from 28 million to 100 billion, according to the calculation in this paper. I believe it's billions. Then the ark rested on mountains of Ararat, 8 people. The ark was a visible sign to the post-Diluvian generations until the death of the patriarch. Just as in the Garden of Eden until the flood, the ark was a visible sign of God to the post-Diluvians. And you can see the destruction, even by the tsunami. Can you imagine the great flood destruction, leaving behind all the vast of destruction? So the post-Diluvian, everywhere they went, they noted about this big destruction, a reminder of the sinfulness of the antediluvians and why God destroyed them. This was before the tsunami in Japan, and it was after the tsunami in Japan. Vast destruction of earth, even after tsunami. How about the Great Flood? And because of this was enshrined into the thoughts of the survivors. Documents, history, and legend. Almost every region in earth, world missionary report finding remote, isolated tribes have flood legends similar to the biblical account. Over 500 flood legends worldwide in every continent and every tribe of the world. Massive, inscribed into the minds of the survivors. And here you see in the Indian, 8 people. In the Chinese version, 8 people. How can that be? Vast continents apart. And they have all these flood traditions. Noah then built an ark, an altar unto the Lord. Again, he remembered how to sacrifice to the Lord God. Ancient Chinese, in the light of the book of Genesis, in the bird Suqing, the oldest Chinese historical source, the book records that in the year 2230 BC, Emperor Shun sacrificed a Shandi in what we call the border sacrifice. The Chinese have been called one of the most history-conscious, tradition-conscious peoples of the world. And they have this border sacrifice, these ceremonies which goes back at least to 230 BC, was continued in China for over 4,000 years up until the fall of the Manchus in AD 1911. And here is a recitation of the Ming Dynasty emperor during the worship service. It says here, in the beginning it was great chaos with a form and dark, 5 elements, and then thou madest heaven, thou make earth, thou make man, all things with the reproductive power of God, their being. Genesis stuff, isn't it? The Temple of Heaven in Beijing, built in 1420 and redone 1545 and so on. Big complex. Do go and visit. Here in the vault of the Temple of Heaven, it says here, inside the pure vault, simple plug of dedication, Chinese have no idols in their homes. They're only plug. It says here, Huang Tian Shangti, Supreme Lord of great heaven. There are no idols or other gods represented in this complex. This is the true God of China. And you don't believe, you look inside, the replicas of the sin offering by the Emperor of China. No roasted pigs. Young cow for a sin offering according to Leviticus. You can find that in the Temple of Heaven. So why? In the story of Abraham and Isaac, my son God will provide himself the lamb for a burnt offering. Thus did the ancient Chinese believe in the story of this? God will provide a son. Pagan and Christian Creed by Edward Carpenter, but he's not a pro-Christian. The book is not a pro-Christian book. The idea of God sacrificing his son for the salvation of the world is so remote and so remarkable, yet it ranges through all ancient religion and back to the earliest times and is embodied in their rituals. Can you imagine even today, most religion, most pagan, whatever it is, still have sacrifices in their worship? And then the rainbow, God said, whenever you see the rainbow, I will not destroy the earth by a flood. But at the same time, also a reminder to the post-diluvians, whenever you see the rainbow, it is a reminder of the flood that happened. And then Noah, did they keep the Sabbath? I believe they do. A Sabbath is a sign that God is creator and redeemer. So at the funeral of Noah, these are the people still alive. Abraham was 60 years old. Noah attained the wisdom from past generations and reached down to the future generation, passing the knowledge of God on to descendants, even to the 20th generation, as he knew his descendant Abraham for 60 years before he died. And so, number of years, Noah knew the antediluvians before the flood. Heaven's story of redemption communicated from God to Adam and then passed on to generations. It was the patriarch Noah who served as a bridge that grabbed such first-hand knowledge from the early patriarchs and passed it on to his descendants, even unto Abraham. So when we see the historical facts about creation, Garden of Eden, Adam's fall, worldwide flood, story of redemption, were almost first-hand in the heart of Abraham, who had known Noah, whose father and grandfather had received such fresh knowledge from Adam himself. Noah was still alive when his great-grandson Nimrod and some of his descendants began building the Tower of Babel. Now Abraham knew his ancestor Noah for a span of 60 years. Therefore, Abraham was alive to know about Nimrod, the Tower of Babel, because he interacted with the ancestor Noah. So these are the truths that pass on from generation to generations, whether you believe or you don't believe. And these are all recorded down in all the books of ancient times. 1, the creation of all things by the word of God's power. 2, the descent of all men from our common parents, Adam and Eve. 3, our connection with Adam as the head of the human family. 4, that one descended from Adam, yet without sins, to save us from our sin. The institution of one day in 7 to be a day of holy rest unto God, written by the non-Seventh-day Adventist Alfred Edersheim, a Jewish writer. The ancients, anti- and post-diluvians had every opportunity to know these truths as taught and handed down from the faithful ancient patriarchs, to obey and serve the Creator God, and to look forward in faith to the arrival of the promised seed. But as stated by Paul in the book of Romans, God is revealed from heaven, all ungodliness, unrighteousness. They know the truth about God because he has made it obvious to them. But ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. Through everything God made, they can clearly see his invisible qualities, eternal power, divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God. Yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. And they began to think up foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Remember all the idols and images they created. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. What a true story of pagan religion. The antediluvian and post-diluvian ancients had a cloud of witnesses in Adam to Noah before the flood, and from Noah to Abraham after the flood. Their records of the past, in traditions, myths, and legends, though often adulterated in a mixture of truth and error, testified that their stories came from an original truthful source, same as the Bible. And this book, you can get on the internet, The World Before the Flood and the History of Patriarchs by Alfred Edersheim, a Jewish writer, a very old book. Creation, man, in the Garden of Eden, the fall. Here is what he wrote. As in the souls of man, we see the ruins of what he had been before the fall, so in the legends and traditions of the various religions of antiquity, we recognize the echoes of what men had originally heard from the mouth of God. Not only one race, but almost all nations have in their traditions preserved some dim remembrance alike of an originally happy and holy state, a so-called golden age in which the intercourse between heaven and earth was unbroken, and of a subsequent sin and fall of mankind. And all nations also have cherished a faint belief in some future return of this happy state. Paradise, okay? That is in some form of coming redemption in the hearts of men, of this faint longing for a redeemer. And here not only so, but as the dim remembrance of the better state from which men have fallen and of a hope deliverance had been preserved among all heathen nations, so also had that necessity of sacrifice. All pagan religions have some sort of a sacrifice. Even the bloody rites of savages, nay, the cruel sacrifices of best beloved children. Now understand why they sacrifice children? Because of the story of the promised seed. What they were, but their cry of despair in the felt need of reconciliation to God through sacrifice, the giving up of what was dear in Rome instead of the offerer. These are the terribly broken pillars of what once had been the temple, the terribly distorted traditions of truths once divinely revealed. Blessed be God for the light of His gospel, which has taught us the way, the truth, and the life, even Him who is the Lamb of the God, which taken away the sin of the world. They substituted something else when God could have given the Lamb of God for them. With all the evidences in nature, God's creation, structures, Garden of Eden, cherubims holding flaming sword, the ark, the flood, the devastation everywhere after the flood, and animal sacrifices, the Sabbath, testimonies and lives of faithful ancient patriarchs, and even the actions and the voice of Creator God, yet there arose only rebellion and counterfeit. Why? In the antediluvian time, it's because of Cain, Enoch, and Lamech. In the post-diluvian, because of Cush, Nimrod, and Semiramis. They knew God, but did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their lives, and their foolish hearts became darkened, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to ungodly lives. Romans 1:21 and 28. Though they were fully aware of God's righteous decree, that those who do such things deserve to die, they not only do them themselves, but approve and applaud others who practice them. On Tuesday, when I was doing this part of the sermon, I lost my pen drive. All the research that I have done, all gone. Fortunately, I usually don't put the sermon somewhere else. I don't know how, but I saved this in the hospital computer. For a few days, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat much. All the things in the pen drive are gone. I just lost a pen drive. I felt so bad about it. How about all of us? Have you lost God? Just as the ancient of the world, they knew God, but they chose not to follow God. Today, as we sit today, have you lost God? God is trying to find us. Would you come back to Him?